Hello and welcome to another episode of Page Burners. This is a series where we read and talk about books in the Malazan universe in publication order. I think we are starting with Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson, which is the first book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. We will also be getting to Esselmont, but not for a while yet. Today's discussion is going to be for chapters 11, 12, and 13, which is, I think, book 4, Assassins. With me, of course, I have the usual group of friends and one new face. Everybody will go around introducing themselves and also tell us what you're most excited to talk about, maybe starting with Carl.
Yeah, I'm Carl. This is my second full time through the Book of the Fallen. And, oh man, what am I most excited to talk about? There's some interesting stuff. Maybe the meeting with Shadow Throne. That was very dramatic.
Nice.
Quickbin in general, actually, I feel like I really enjoyed his point of view in these chapters.
I'm Steve from pagechewing, and I am most excited to talk about probably things I know we're not going to talk about, which something about fantasy that if you know the titles in future books, it kind of, I don't say ruins things for you, but kind of pay attention to certain keywords and certain names. So we'll talk about a certain god that was crippled, and I'm guessing that'll have ramifications for much later in the series.
Which one is that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And Dan.
I'm Dan. And I'm interested in talking about, I'm interested in someone to explain to me what happened with that whole Tattersale chapter, because I was like, I know where we started, I know where we ended up. I don't know how we ended up there, though.
My name's Shannon. This is my second time through, just like Carl. And he also stole my most interesting talk to, which is the Shadow Throne Quickbin
Nice.
scene. I really like that a lot.
Got to watch out for Carl. He likes to take ideas and use them before we're able to.
It's my favorite thing. I'm a thief. Crocus is a boy after my heart.
Oh, I forgot to talk about mine. I want to talk about the sorry POVs we got in these chapters. Yeah.
All right, back to Dan's.
Yes.
The Tattersale.
Yeah, because
Magic.
Tattersale died,
Mhm.
and now she's back. And then something happened, some time travel, dimension, reincarnation, melding of souls or something, magic thing,
Mhm.
right?
I think that sums it up.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key thing here is that we know her soul was put into the body of a baby who was about to be born by a Rivi woman, Rivi being the Plains tribes people.
Yes.
Um,
But why?
And a stitched together dead body was involved too.
yes, that's right, which is, in case it was unclear, I mean, I think this isn't a spoiler, this is just what happened. It's Nightchill. She put her body into Nightchill's corpse. So if you remember,
Yeah.
Melerdin was looking for a place to bury Nightchill, and so she essentially sacrificed her own body, hopped into the corpse, wandered away until she eventually wandered into here, where she was thrust soulfully into a baby that was about to be born, and not just born, but born as a soul taken, which we learn is a type of shapeshifter.
How did she jump to Nightchill's body?
Chaos magic.
Was that chaos?
I think that's what we learned in the last chapter, and then it's discussed a bit more that, like, there's the taint of chaos magic in all of this. Soul shifting. It's an old chaotic I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what happened. She used some chaos magic that I guess she picked up from Hairlock. That part is still unclear to me on how she knew how to do that, but
That is some dark shit.
yeah.
And who's the Rivi woman? Like what? Where did she come from? Like what? What is going on with that? Just a random woman?
Who knows?
She
Okay.
she seems to be someone with magic powers, at least similar in nature, if not on the same level as Krupp and the Imas. Did we get a title for him? The Pran Chol guy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, same. She seems to have some kind of magic, and two, she seems to know about what was going on with Tatisel because they sort of prepped the baby for the soul, right?
Yeah.
They did mention that the child she's bearing does not have a soul, like they're not going to be doing any damage. It's just a physical body into which Tatasel's soul will be transferred. So that had to have been prepared ahead of time, but I guess we're not privy to the details
Mm.
yet.
What
Yeah.
about the soul that's already in the child's body?
But there isn't one. That's what they told us.
That's why it's kind of a perfect
Yeah.
They
vessel.
don't get the soul until they're born? Is that how it works?
No, I think they said that this child was prepared especially without a soul. Like it was just the physical form so that it can happen. So that the thing with Tatisel can happen. Because I think Krupp asks that question, if I remember correctly. And they tell him, no, it's fine. We can do
maybe.
this. No damage will happen.
Okay. So somehow they knew in advance that something like this would happen. And then I assume there's some sort of plan that they have for something to happen with this, I guess.
Yeah.
Which we're not
Yeah.
privy to. Okay.
And I know she kind of goes through labor and gives birth in that realm, but I don't know if that also translates to her actually being pregnant and giving birth in the physical realm, or if the child just sort of appears because she's apparently growing and she's fine.
I think the number one thing I would say here is it's okay to be confused here.
Yeah, that
because
too.
we lack a lot of context for what's happening. The only real context we have is kind of the background, like the ethnic background of who these characters are. We know that they come from different times, and we know now that Tattersall is about to be reborn as a ribby baby, who we learn later will be fast growing. Other than that, I mean, I can say even on my second time through the series, there are certain details that I'm still trying to piece together about this, although I certainly have a better idea of kind of what's going on than you do. We do learn things, but this is definitely one that I am eager to keep my eye on because I had lost track of it in the sprawl of the series. And
Yeah. It's just a bit hard sometimes because you don't know the motivations of anyone in that specific scene, pretty much. You're just you're just there, you're watching things and I don't know why this is happening and why anyone is doing these sort of things. It's just things happening, right?
yeah.
So it makes it a bit hard to be okay, I can see where this is going, or you know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
I think, and I could be wrong about this, I seem to remember from my first time reading it, I think that what they did for Tatisel is sort of an act of kindness, that she's suffering whatever she did and it's terrible, and they are doing this as an act of kindness, but they seem to have gone to a great extent to do that, going all the way back to the beginning of time, whatever. And maybe that's easy, maybe it's not. We don't know enough about the magic to say one way or the other, but we don't know if there's different motivation than just that to put her out of misery.
I would assume so. But
Yeah.
Well, I would say the context of the location and the time is explained as you go along. That's one of the things that I was less confused about. I would say I'm more confused about the motivation and kind of the plan here. I mean, there's certain things I know from later books, but particularly, well, I won't spoil it, but we'll definitely get some answers in the not too distant future.
I mean, the time, it's the same time as what was happening in the previous chapter. I think they were discussing, because they were discussing the Jagged Tyrants and also the clan Emas rituals or whatever thing that happened. It's roughly that time, right? Or no? That's what I thought. So it was somewhat connected to other things that were previously discussed.
Yes.
Yeah. So something probably happened at that time that's very relevant.
Yeah. I mean, what we definitely know is Pran Chol, who's a Tlon, had yet to become the undead immortal.
Yeah.
They'd
But
yet to go through whatever
he mentioned
ritual
something
made
about
them,
it, right?
Yeah.
That's going to happen soon, right? He says.
in his experience. Yes.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. That clears up things a bit slightly. Not really. But it makes it at least I didn't miss anything.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, there aren't explanations provided. I think you figure things out as you go. And some of these things, well, like Carl, I think the motivation's not super clear to me at the moment, but some of the people present here or some of the ways in which magic are used have repercussions for things that happen later on. So at least that bit of foreshadowing is sort of easier to understand, I think, on a second read. Oh, I did want to bring this up as well. So it was Krupp who asked, what of the first child within the Rivi? He asked Kral that, and Kral said there was none. Krupp, the Rivi woman, was prepared in a manner unknown to any man. And he says this sorcery belongs to the moon. And the moon was looming large over that. Right. So the other thing that was interesting to me about this section was when...
Wait, do you think that it's... Sorry. Do you think when it says it's known to the moon, do you think it mean like the Triste Andy or something? Magic? Because like moon spawn or something? I don't know. I wonder if they're connected to the moon somehow. And that's what they're trying to say.
I thought it was moon, like, the female cycles are connected to the moon and a lot of
that
like
makes
female
a lot more
magic.
Sense. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. When Pranchol says, I'm sad that I won't be here, like when the child is born, to see how it grows. And Krupp tells him, no, you actually will, because that ritual happened. I did wonder about some like circularity of things, like how I wondered if Pranchol sort of carried that knowledge back to his time and if that affected anything that he did later on. Just something for me to think about. I thought that was interesting, the sort of circularity when you travel time, when you know things ahead, how much does that influence the decisions you make? So,
do you think this sort of thing happened? Because this thing didn't happen in the real life dimension, did it? I thought it was some sort of magical dimension, or did they actually go back into the past?
It's like this dream world that we've seen Krupp in before. It seems to be, and he meets Cruel there. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's some kind of dream world.
Yeah. So I would say that's not real-time travel, maybe. Some fake time travel.
Well, no, I think Pran Joel really time traveled. Like, he seems like he's from the past. Like, he's from right before he's about to become an IMAS. He came to do this thing, and I think everybody else is present day that's in this.
Time travel confirmed.
Time travel.
Yeah, I think he was there for real. It's not anybody's imagination that Pranchol was there. I agree. So, yeah. Anyway, that was just interesting. But, what else? Then
I want to say, Carl, I thought that was really neat. You pointed out about how this worked. That maybe Tattersall somehow did something to, and maybe has something to do with Hairlock and all that to enable this. Because I was thinking Krupp was the one that put Night Chill in this, I don't know, amalgamation that we have here. But no, actually, he did say like he frowned. A spell had woven around the woman of preservation, but something had happened to that spell. Something had reshaped it. But something had happened to that. Yeah, so like maybe she did somehow reshape that preservation spell that Balderon had cast, and that enabled her to be here as part of this, and then get mixed in with all of it.
Yeah, one of the only things I feel confident about with all of this is that Tattersall moved her soul somehow. But beyond that, like into the body of Night Chill. But beyond that, I don't recall. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of this stuff is weird and confusing, especially like, not knowing where things go. That is
Yeah.
something that I think for any first-time readers that you just have to just hang on tight. Just let it wash over you. It is confusing. You won't understand what's going on sometimes, and that is okay. So long as you can follow like the general movements of the plot, you should be okay.
It'll all make sense in about 8,000 pages.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I wish I could say that.
Maybe more.
Yeah. A lot of it.
As
But
soon as we pry the answers from Steven Erikson's Cold Dead Hands, that's when we'll know.
okay. Okay, just on that subject, not to drag it on for too long. I think she did access, we think, the Chaos Warren, and we got a little bit of some lore, let's call it, about how to access Warren. Like it's when something calls out to you, or when you are connected to a Warren, you can reach out to it. Which I guess at the moment of her death, with so many things going on, does it kind of make sense that she was able to access the Chaos Warren and make things happen for her that she wanted to? I don't know. But
Yeah, I mean, we definitely know that exposure to the Chaos Warren does open you up to being able to use its magic. That's how Hairlock did it. Quickbin does it in these chapters. And so I think that is a reasonable explanation for at least part of it. And maybe somehow witnessing what Quickbin did with Hairlock, because I think it was Quickbin who moved Hairlock's soul into the marionette. She could then, like, using her super wizard genius knowledge, apply that then in the moment into an almost pseudo miracle.
I mean, it seems a pretty strong Warren and pretty easy to use, I guess. So maybe everyone should use it. I don't know, because it seems a lot of them are using it, right? Even Quick Ben now to move around, right?
The problem is it's supposed to drive you crazy. And we're seeing that with Hairlock increasingly. Is he's now just like on a rampage and is hunting Tattersail down. Although I guess at this point he thinks she's dead. So
Yeah.
theoretically.
yeah, Hairlock wouldn't know what happened to Tattersail. So, moving on, Krupp realizes that the Malazans are in his city. And then we get a bit of a Whiskey Jack monologue.
Whiskey Jack is another character that I think I said this last episode, but I'm just caring about him a lot more this time through. I've gotten attached to him.
Yeah, I think, I'm curious what the almost first-time readers think about that monologue for Whiskey Jack, because I care about it and I understand it and sort of get the sense of what kind of person he is. But I'm trying to remember if I cared that first time around, and I didn't really.
Yeah, I didn't. He was not a character I got attached to.
I liked him. I don't think I was attached to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I felt similarly.
But I think like Quick Ben and Kalam kind of overshadowed him to me.
100%.
And the Darujistan crew. I was a big fan of them.
Yeah.
First time I read this.
I mean, in theory, this is the kind of stuff that helps us get to know him better. But I also feel like it hits home better when we are more familiar with him as a character/person.
Yeah, I mean, he's a much more like quiet, stoic. He's not very funny. He's the leader, so he has to be kind of more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like mature.
Yeah, I
he's-
mean, he can't
he's
he
the
can't
leader.
mess around, right?
Can't joke around the
does
same way that the others do.
no, exactly. So it's harder to make him as memorable, right? He's stern. That's a good word. And but what I've really latched on to is how much he cares. And again, I think a reoccurring theme in the series is compassion. And again, that he is the one person who really shows compassion for Sari. And even he's like self-aware about it. He's like, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe she is irredeemable. Maybe she's a monster. But like, I can't help it when I look at her, I see a 17-year-old girl. And I'm not going to repeat the whole uh, monologue I had last week, but I just think that is very powerful because no one else seems to be giving any thought to her circumstances or the girl underneath all the godly interference.
Isn't she fully possessed by Baroque, it seems? So, like, what is Quick Ben seeing in her that, like, oh, she's behaving in a way that's, like, 17-year-old or something?
Well, Quickben's not really. It's again, it's not.
Whiskey Jack, sorry.
I don't
Whiskey
think
Jack.
it's her behavior. Like, I think they
Mm.
all look into her eyes and, they see her as this, like, inhuman, dangerous monster. It's that he literally looks at her and he's like, that's a little girl,
Okay.
that's a child. Just the simple fact of, like, and especially he knows, like, they know the context. They know that she has been influenced. They maybe don't know the degree.
Okay.
But so I think he's like the one person who's like, well, maybe she isn't a lost cause. There's a girl somewhere underneath all of that. And I mean, actually, he doesn't even know if that's true, but he just can't help but feel
Yeah.
like this poor girl
I
has
mean,
been
isn't it?
thrown into a game so far
Actually,
beyond her.
I guess so, yeah. But, like, I guess the other people, they don't even know about this previous girl. They only see that whatever is currently there, right? If they don't know it before. Yeah, I guess like you said, it's just she looks that way. But it's a bit of a shallow thing because everyone else is looking at her personality and saying her personality is terrible. She's like a killer. And he's just looking at the appearance in a sense. You know what I mean? I don't know.
No, I think he is noticing what is up with her, and he's so there are these lines, right? There are two significant bits that I highlighted about. One is about how she doesn't look like a 17-year-old. Her face is the face of all that cannot be fathomed,
Yeah.
and she's looking you in the eye. So there's that one. And then the musing, in the empty eyes of this child, he'd seen the withering of his own soul. So I think there's two things happening here. One is, there's two possibilities for Sari. She either became a cold-blooded killer on her own, whatever circumstances led to her being like that. She's a 17-year-old. And the other possibility is what Quick Ben and Kalam have been theorizing about, which is she's either influenced by, I don't know if they went so far as to say that she's been possessed by a god, but she's being influenced by a god. So she's not in control of her actions. So, I mean, I think it takes someone like Whiskey Jack to find empathy in the first situation or compassion in the first situation where she became like that for whatever circumstance, that she is a killer of her own accord. And in the second case, also, like, and I think that's what's sort of leading him to his own musings. She's forcing him to look into himself. So, like, he's expressing compassion for Sari, and he's looking into himself too. Like, that's what's happening in this scene. So, I don't think he's seeing anything different. He is just sort of interpreting it differently from how the others are allowing himself to.
I think there's some important context here, which is, he was. Like, we know he was a stonemason as a kid, but he did join the army pretty young. And we learn a little more about that, and that his dad died and he wore his dad's boots and all of that. And or his boots had his dad's like chalk on it or something. And basically this is a guy who has grown up in war. And so I think he instinctively has greater sympathy for a child thrown into war. And so I suspect a part of him is seeing himself in her. And probably not just himself, but a lot of children he has seen in the bridge burners or around him. He doesn't say that explicitly. He doesn't think that explicitly, but I suspect that I read that as the subtext of the way he views her. On top of that, I don't think it's rational. I think it is simply a matter of this kind of radical compassion, of feeling for someone who, for the slightest spark of belief, that maybe she deserves something other than disregard, if not outright loathing, to be viewed as something other than just a threat. And I think that is a powerful notion, especially, again, knowing that I do think it represents in some way his own experience with himself and with war. Right now, he's older, but we also know he's not as old as some of the other people around him. Like Dujek is older, I believe, or is that right? Or is Dujek younger? Maybe Dujek's younger.
No, I think he's old. He was talking about creaking bones and stuff in one of the chapters.
Right.
I mean, I could be remembering what part of old age he was complaining about, but
I do remember Whiskey Jack is younger than he looks. Like he's just like seeing. He's been to war, so it's aged him. But on top of that, just that he's been in it so long. Like again, since he was basically a boy, that it has shaped the way he views the world and made it so that he can't help but feel, pity and compassion for Sari.
Cool.
And yeah, I like what you said about the people in the army being pretty young too, because when we meet Whiskey Jack and Fiddler for the first time in the prologue, we are told that Fiddler's just a few years older than Paran, who at the time was 12. So about Sari's age at most, and he's also in the army, right? So not quite the cold-blooded killing machines, but they do kill. And I guess maybe that's a part of what Whiskey Jack is doing too, how her killing is different from or was that us last week? I don't remember.
Can you guys remind me? So I could swear that Sari was 15. Like I swear in the opening scene, she is in chapter 1. She's like 13, and I think only 2 years have passed. So am I reading it right that she lied and said she's older than she is, and that's like why they keep talking about her as a 17-year-old girl? Like isn't she younger than that? Or does she say in her POV? I can't remember if she in her POV identifies herself as 17. But I swear she was like 13 when she enlisted.
Yeah, I had her age tracked at 15 too, so it threw me off when they said 17. And I can't remember if she gave a different age when she enlisted. But
I thought maybe she did, actually, now that I think about it.
I mean, that would make sense, because a 13-year-old is not going to be allowed to join the army.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, not the Malazan army, right? With how organized they are. Like they have a like legitimate military class, Like they're not, some just like thrown together city garrison or, some tribal, war force. Like they are a proper organization, which means having standards. But of course, as is true in real life, those standards are often bent. And, kids, I remember reading as an American about all the stories of the teenagers who lied about their age to enlist in World War II.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Paul, wouldn't it have made things easier for, I guess, what's the name of the guy that's possessing her? What's her name? Do you know?
Cotillion.
Cotillion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it have been easier for him to do his like secret job assassination and all the sort of thing if he didn't behave in such a suspicious way and just behave like a normal 17-year-old girl?
Maybe a god of assassins doesn't know how to act like a 17-year-old girl.
Maybe.
That's a good
fair.
point. Yeah.
maybe he could still think about like, oh, maybe it's better if I don't disembowel these people in front of everyone. Maybe that would keep my cover a bit better. Or maybe he could let her like 90% of the time be herself and then take over when he needs to. Maybe? I don't know. I don't know if that's possible, actually.
He's kind of getting away with it now, though, right? I mean, Whiskey just really not stopping her. It's kind of like, you're just a kid, you're fine,
Yeah.
but she's out killing people.
But
don't
everyone
know,
is looking at her, right? Keeping an eye on her.
I guess, but no one's like, constraining her. She's just kind of hanging out, killing people while we're over her.
Hanging
She's
out
working
and
out
killing
fine, I
people.
guess.
in 2 years, she went from joining to now part of like the elite. So what he was doing also maneuvered him to where he is, I would
True.
point out.
This is where he wants to
Yes.
be.
I thought these were just like all the guys left over from the Bridge Burners because everyone else died. That's what I thought.
That is true, but at the same time, these are the elite of the Bridge
yeah.
Burners. Like they're the survivors for a reason.
Yeah, they were the survivors of that big campaign over in the 7 cities that we haven't seen, but that was a pretty big campaign, and these are the guys that made it out of that. So,
a lot of them died at the beginning of the book when the tunnels collapsed.
but yes,
right?
they went from like 15,000 to 30 or something there with the in chapter 2 or 3, whatever that was.
Yeah, fair
So-
enough.
Now might be a good time to talk about the sorry POV, because to your question about why doesn't he just let her be and then take over. Sometimes when we got the first instance of the POV, I kind of felt like there's a bit of a blended identity there. Like
Yeah,
Cotillion
absolutely.
is feeling like he's thinking of himself as the girl. There are some voices that it's almost like he sort of lost himself in her mind and barely remembers who he is himself. And the girl is in there somewhere, but it's not being given much of a foothold at the moment. So I feel like it might almost be dangerous for him to let her take over, because he might lose himself.
I see. Okay. Forget
It's
who he
possible.
is.
That's true. Yeah. But that was interesting. The weeping child and all the word when Whiskey Jack says the word seer, that's what triggers that brief moment of control that the girl takes over. I think, which is again interesting. Was it triggered by Rigger or the girl herself, who remembered, who was triggered by the word seer?
Yeah, it was Riga. Definitely Riga.
There's also that really warm moment when Whiskey Jack is basically having a panic attack about how he's responsible for all these lives. And then Fiddler and Mallet notice and come right over to ask if he's okay. And then to sort of make them feel okay, he asks Mallet to heal some stuff for him.
Yeah.
Varsha, I'd say here, it says when she hears seer, it says, it felt as if a dark, compacted thing in her brain had burst open with that word and now warred against all that surrounded it. And my interpretation of that seems to be that's sorry. That's the Fisher girl bursting free for just a moment until I am Cotillion. She heard herself murmur, patron of assassins known as the Rope.
Mm.
And then he reasserts himself.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think the big, I guess reveal is the right word, is that Sari is in there, or the girl who was before Sari.
We also get a bit of a monologue about how she only killed where necessary and only took out. And immediately after that, she goes and kills a guard and then another one. But yes, she does have this moment of I'm not doing too much damage. I'm just doing what's necessary. We don't yet know what necessary is or what things are necessary for.
The Rope is the god of assassins, not the god of hugs. So comes with the territory.
It's less than he might have done, but it's still looking pretty bad for us. Okay. And then we move on to anything else to add on that subject. We can always come back to it later, but before, yeah.
In that same section, I heard somebody in a podcast say this. I've in the couple of years I've read this, it said, "I am within yet apart. I stand at Shadow Throne's side, and he is named." And I've always pronounced this like Amonis or something. And I heard somebody say ominous, and I was like, oh, Shadow Throne's other name is Ominous.
Oh.
Like I've always just pronounced that so differently in my head when I read it. I didn't realize it was like almost a pun.
It
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
it does. I was pronouncing it sort of like I was Indianizing the pronunciation of that as I do, and I was saying ominous or something like that, with
Yeah.
ominous. I
I was
like the
thinking of saying ominous or something.
yeah.
Ominous.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's ominous.
He sure is ominous. I mean, do we want to, transition then into
Yeah,
Quick Ben goes into the Warren of Shadow. Well, I mean, the first thing he does is he opens up a gate in the Warren of Chaos that leads to the Warren of Shadow, and he is escorted by the Hounds of Shadow to see their master, Shadow Throne himself. And we find that Quick Ben, first of all, is referred to at the very end of it all as Delot, and that he was a high priest of House Shadow in the 7 cities. Now, I know on our forum, there was some debate about whether or not he was in fact a priest of just the cult of Shadow, or specifically Shadow Throne, who we know is a relatively new god.
Is it different?
I think there is a
I
difference.
don't want to get too much into it, but yes, there in a future book we'll get into it where there is a cult of Shadow, and I don't know if that's necessarily Shadow Throne. I don't know.
So is it the
Like, it's been a
Warren
while
of
since I read
Shadow
those
Throne
books.
or the Warren of Shadows?
So Warren of Shadow. And so this is going to blow your mind. Shadow Throne is called Shadow Throne because he sat on the Shadow Throne.
Yes. Okay.
So
That's how he took over the Shadow
we know,
Warren.
yes, we know
Shadow
he,
realm.
right, and the Rope are new. They're relatively new gods, and they came to power.
Okay.
Beyond
Yeah,
all
it
that,
told
you
us
know,
they showed up around the same time Lysine took over the Malazan Empire. That's about
Right.
the same time those two gods showed up.
and the Shadow Warren existed before then. It was long abandoned. This is not a spoiler. These are things that are talked about early in the book. And so, given that, I think it's fair to assume that there was a cult of Shadow even before Shadow Throne himself was enthroned.
But I
within
would assume if you're a cult of Shadow, if there's a guy that comes and takes the throne of Shadow, you're like, okay, well, he's my new guy, my new top guy.
Exactly.
Right?
No, exactly. That's why
Okay.
why there was tension here.
Oh, I
between-
see. Okay.
Yeah, that's why Shadow Throne was able to be mad at him,
Yes.
even though he didn't.
I get it.
He was like,
That makes a
"You-
lot more sense to me.
Yeah, you ditched me. You ditched my people. I mean, the timeline is wonky. It's unclear, and I'm unsure if it's ever we're given specific dates. Because I don't know how long Quick Ben has been with the Bridge Burners at this point. But, at some point he was a priest of the Shadow Cult. And I don't know if that overlapped with Shadow Throne or not.
Maybe
but
he
I
left because of Shadow Throne. He didn't agree with the new
Maybe.
guy in charge.
But certainly, I think it's fair to say to anyone who is following this, tracking this, but is confused, that there was a cult of Shadow before Shadow Throne. I don't think he specifically, like, this just arose right when Shadow Throne ascended the throne. I think it already existed. And then they were like, oh, I guess Shadow Throne's our guy now.
I see. That makes sense.
Certainly, it would, I have to imagine it would be a lot nicer to actually have a god to pray to rather than just the idea of Shadow and I guess the Warren, which I guess you could still use its magic, but you couldn't maybe get divine help. Not that the gods are very helpful.
I wonder what's the difference between having a god in a warren or not.
Is it like their realm? Is it kind of you're going to their field,
Yeah, maybe
home
it's
field
like
advantage?
secular magic versus religious divine
Yeah.
magic. I don't know.
Maybe.
It's like
But
the
if it's a cult implies some sort of religion, right?
well, I mean, you're right. Yeah, in this case, it's already a cult. You're right. So I don't know. I don't know how they worship. We definitely get more details later on about shadow worship, but I'm unclear exactly on what that would look like without a god.
Yeah. I'm curious, just because there's so much mixing between like the magic, which is, I guess, let's call it secular, and the religion, right? I don't know where one ends and when one starts and what it seems so much overlap to me that it's hard to figure out their roles, right? So I'm really interested in seeing more information about it.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are definitely systems, but at the same time, like the idea of magic itself as being in some ways unpredictable ultimately, even though mortals and immortals have created kind of systems around it. I think similarly, these religions do act as kind of a system imposed upon something that exists in and of itself.
I see. I guess one more question is, like, is magic something everyone can do? Like, can you just study and learn magic, or do you need to have some sort of innate talent?
They have these people they're calling adepts, right? And I kind of thought that someone with talent, like with Fiddler, he apparently has some sort of sixth sense. So I guess they have to have some ability for it, but it's not super clear. I guess you have to have some talent or inclination for it.
Yeah, I think you have to be born with a little bit of talent.
Yeah.
And then also just thinking about some other characters and stuff, there's like, I don't want to say genetics plays a role, but it definitely like there's like a lineage idea, I feel like, in some places where it's like, oh, my grandparents could do it, now I can do it. Or like one particular character I'm kind of thinking of that does something like that.
I think that theoretically anyone could do magic, although not any type of magic. I think everyone has a particular connection to a particular Warren. Most people only one Warren. This is kind of what Tattersail actually talks about pretty early in the book, is that the Thea Warren basically chose her. Like when she was being like tested by her master or whatever, and like that's the Warren that worked for her. And some people are freaks and can do a bunch of different Warrens, like quickly. And that is very rare, we know. That said, I think even though theoretically everyone could do magic, that doesn't mean that everyone will actually be able to activate that ability, or that they will ever actually be very good at it, even if they did. I do think there's probably a range of talent. I do know the notion of an adept is tied to being a seer, essentially, like having some ability to foretell the future.
I see.
I
can see that maybe religion is a way of accessing magic power, stuff like that, without having magical talent. So you ask some, like the Lord of a Warren or something, to intercede on your behalf with his powers, without you having to do the magic. Maybe, I don't know.
I think that's a wise reading of it. I think you're probably right that if you have no magical talent, but you're a really good priest to High House Shadow, then maybe Shadow Throne will look down on you and say, yes, I will do some shadow magic for you, give you some ability.
And fun fact, that Quickben's name has a dual meaning.
Really?
Yeah, because
other than
the one that his girlfriend gave him, and also because he's quick on his feet and he's very clever.
I see. Okay.
I like the reason his girlfriend gave him.
I still laugh every time I see his name because of that.
His girlfriend, of course, being Kalam, by the way.
Oh, is that their relationship?
They flirt all the time. They're like an old married couple. I love them. They're so charming in these chapters. They got each other's back.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's just something I love in these books. Is Erikson writes amazing duos. He just is so good at the banter. He's a master of it, and making it very character focused. So it's not just like everyone talks in the same bantery way.
Yeah. Yeah, I had some good one at some point, like, oh, like, you wouldn't see this. And then it's like, everyone's like, oh, yeah, you're going to see that also. And that, like a bunch of stuff that was actually happening. I don't remember what it was exactly. Something about assassins, maybe? Was it before the assassins part? But yeah, it had some pretty nice banter in here.
Yeah. I guess it was when they were setting up for Quick Ben to go meet Shadow Throne. And
Oh, yeah. I think so.
yeah. It was Quick Ben says, kill me if I don't return by tomorrow morning. And Kalam says, sure, you think they're being sarcastic until they say, oh, actually, he wouldn't trust anyone but his closest friends to do that for him. But I was going to say something. So I think we covered the topics that four of us wanted to talk about. Steve, I'm sorry, I completely forgot what yours was. Can you remind us? And we'll see if now is a good time to talk about
That's probably something we can talk about because it has to do with much later in the series is the god that was crippled.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I think this is a perfect time to talk about that a little bit because
Okay.
that's really kind of chronologically the next thing is Corrupt reading the history book that repeats endlessly, lacks brevity, if you will. And
Come on, Krupp complaining about someone not being brief. That's rich.
it is rich. It's so funny. Everything about that, there's layers. And just the meta fact of these books being so long and increasingly long as we go into the series, and Erikson making jokes about brevity is just, it's chef's kiss.
Yeah. So, but the point you brought up, Steve, specifically about later book names sort of not spoiling per se, but making your sort of ears prick when you see some terms or words. I've seen that with other series as well, where if you know the title ahead of time, you start paying more attention to certain things. But in this case, I think you can pay all the attention you want to the cripple god, but you won't really know much until really the 9th book. And that's only because the 9 and 10 books are one book split in two. We will find out a lot along the way, but not enough to not spoiler worthy for anything.
I
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, Steve, what do you want to talk about the crippled god?
No, I guess I can't really ask much about it because those of you who have read it, well, of course it'd be spoilers, but no, just I think is it good? Well, it's kind of a little bit off topic, but is it good or bad to know too many details about a series? Even just the title of a book, it can kind of make your ears perk up, like Varsha said, for a small detail. Because if you read this when it was being published, it wouldn't really mean much to you, and then later, it's kind of a different experience, not knowing what later books are titled.
I like it because it helps me latch on to things that are more important. And so, yes, I mean, spoiler alert, book 10 is called The Crippled God. So you have some idea of what they're dealing with in book 10. I don't think it is that spoilery though, beyond just, the crippled god factors into it. And I do agree that you on a first time read might kind of skip over this dry yet dryly humorous corrupt section, reading about the crippled god. Like I think many people might skip over it if they don't realize that it's something to look at and kind of pay attention to. And so I think it's nice to have that so that on your first time through, you're already kind of, even in small ways, picking up on details of the crippled god, because obviously he is of import and will play a role in the story of the series as a whole.
If anything,
Well,
I
I
think
was
it's
going to
really...
say,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
in this paragraph you're referencing right here, you've got the crippled god capitalized 1, 2, 3 times, like just boom, boom. I mean, he's drawing attention to it. Like this is a major
Definitely.
thing.
In certain motifs as well, right? The chains around the crippled god, that he was cast down. This is important imagery.
If anything, I think it's kind of cool to see something set up in the first book that will play a big part later. So the seeds are being planted so early in the series. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
What
One
do
thing
you
I
guys
thought was neat
sorry.
about this
Go ahead,
was about this section is that we got a little bit of here in what he's reading here. It talks about the 5 black dragons and the 1 red, which was kind of him verifying what Cole had said at the end of the last chapter about the 5 black dragons up on Moonspawn. So I think we now have Chekhov's dragon kind of hanging out, like, because we know there's 5 black dragons somewhere hidden from us in this book.
I think maybe they're never gonna come out with just saying
Possible.
side, right? We don't know.
They're all sleepy. If this was
And the
Baker,
red
they'd
one
be
too.
like fucking dead or something.
Yeah. Maybe. I was gonna, I don't know, like Steve asking about the title and the spoiler made me think for something like, do we even need titles of books in series like these? You know what I mean? Like the titles of books don't really function the way they would as like a normal title of book, as like catching your attention for you to like, oh, I want to interesting title, I'm gonna read that. Like if you read the first book, you're not gonna read the second or third based on the titles. So do they even need a title at that point? Or it's just like custom because it's a book and it needs a title. We could just call it Malazan 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, right?
That's an
I
interesting
guess it's
concept.
just custom that books have titles, but yeah, I think you're actually really close to a good point with this series, particularly because so many of the titles of the series are so like this book, Gardens of the Moon. What is that? I mean, I think some of us here know, but they haven't even talked about it. It's just a vague thing. It's just, oh, it's Gardens of the Moon. Like, but what does that really have had to do with this story so far? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
nothing
then,
so far.
next one, what, Dead House Case? What's a dead house? I don't know. I mean, you'll figure it out eventually, but it's not, these titles aren't really as important to the story as like some books. Like they're almost like Steve just picks a cool sounding concept he had in a book and was like, yeah, we're going to call it that.
Well, I think, I think they're very evocative. Like that's something I really like about this series is the titles are very evocative. They make me, intrigued about what we're going to read. Certain images occur in my mind. Gardens of the Moon is one that is very colorful, and I enjoy that. I think you make an interesting point, Dan, that with these long fantasy series, really they don't need individual titles for each book, other than I think, frankly, I think it's just a marketing decision. Like I think people like titles.
Fair enough.
People like books having special titles. Like think about how anytime a new book in a long-running series, a beloved series is about to come out, like how excited everyone gets when they learn the title, right? I think it's just a simple matter of like marketing and economics, and that people like
Fair
titles.
enough. So I mean, personally, I don't really even look at the title unless it's like a series I've never read, or I'm at a library, like in a bookstore, looking at something and I don't know what I'm looking for, I guess. Because otherwise, I don't want to get it spoiled on whatever is going to be the book by thinking too much about the title, I guess.
Is that just for series, or in general you don't care about the titles of books?
No, if I'm for standalone books, I care a lot more.
Okay.
For some reason, I don't know why, but it feels more important for a standalone book to me than for a series. I'm not sure why.
I think that's probably because it is more important because you have the series title, and so that, like, without the series title, you would be completely out to lunch. But with the series title, that's I think in some ways
I guess it's kind of like a subtitle in a series, right? It's Malazan, and then the subtitle Garden of the Moons or something.
It's
right?
Malazan. We're saying it's Malazan Book of the Fallen.
Malazan Book of the Fallen. Yeah, I guess that's the main title in a sense, and then the other ones are subtitles, somewhat.
And you have a brilliant name like Malazan Book of the Fallen, and then you tack numbers onto it.
I guess so.
Malazan
I
Book
know.
of the Fallen One.
I mean, if we want to get really technical, my book says Gardens of the Moon, a tale of the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
There you go.
I guess it is technically it's the other way around, the text, the title and subtitle, but functionally it's opposite. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting while Steve was mentioning it, talking about titles.
Yeah.
Circling
Anyways.
back, Steve, was there anything else you wanted to talk about the crippled god? Was there like something you wanted to highlight beyond obviously it's a name that stands out, knowing the later book name?
I think there's lots of things that stood on these chapters, but the couple of things that it seems to me like Krupp is a love or hate type of character. I didn't really like him too much, but he's growing on me. I kind of embracing him a little bit more. And the whole sequence with the Quick Ben and the Shadow Throne was really cool. I like that a lot. And they realize who he is when he's leaving. That was, and he laughs about it after. That was really great.
It's a mic drop moment. It's so good. Quick Ben just like, playing Shadow Throne there is just, it's amazing. It's perfect. I don't know how you couldn't like Quick Ben after that sequence.
Yeah. And Shadow Throne was very, I don't know, he gave very classical villain vibe in that sequence specifically, I think.
He giggles and everything, right?
I was going to say, that's one of my favorite things, a recurring thing is that Shadow Throne giggles.
Yeah.
He's already done it multiple times in this book. Like, I love that this like mysterious, creepy character, like, could so easily just be like broody and dark, like kind of like the Rope is a bit, although they've had some banter, but like Shadow Throne giggles. I love that. It's one of those things that on my first read stood out to me so much and made him so much more colorful and interesting to me as a character. Like he has that element of like mischief and almost like a featness. Like I love it. He giggles.
Yeah, but the classical villains,
Shadow
like
Throne-
cartoons too, they do laugh. So I guess it depends how you mention the laugh.
Shadow Throne definitely has a flair for the dramatic. And
Yes.
Yeah, he almost comes off as a Disney villain at certain points, just how he is I don't know. It's a good counter to Cotillion. They go really well together. One is giggling and one is completely scary, deadly.
But he seems to be having fun, a little bit at least, some fun in his role, I guess.
Absolutely.
And embracing the tropes of his role with like, I want, I like to make a deal, right? Sort of thing.
Yeah, I love. I mean, again, this is another one of Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont. Playing with classic fantasy tropes, and in this case, definitely, I think it's another kind of play on the Dark Lord, right? The supervillain. He's literally like the King of Shadow. Like that is such a classic evil, and he's been so antagonistic in this book. Him and the Rope. The God of Assassins obviously seems like a bad guy. And here Cotillion is just like chewing up the scenery. Like if this was a TV show or a movie or something, you just know they would get some like amazing, like probably British actor, right? Classically trained, who would chew up this, like Alan Rickman would be like a great Shadow Throne. And rest in peace to the legend. And it would just be so fun to watch them. Like that's the type of character Shadow Throne is.
I like that. There's one particular Shadow Throne scene that I'm thinking of that would be brilliant with that actor. But also speaking of dramatic, when Quick Ben enters the realm, all he hears is hounds howling around him. That was so eerie and brilliant.
So spooky.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I did want to ask Dan and Steve what you got out of the stuff that Krupp read from the book about the crippled god. I remember my eyes glazing over it the first time, but did you get anything? Like, because we paid particular attention to the crippled god there.
I think it was it in that same section that they talk about the kind of the different factions that were involved with the early battles?
Yeah. And it was a really long list. Apparently, Krupp expected to see his grandmother.
Yeah, when no one is certain what happened to them, Crocus, or how they became. Oh, that's Crocus. Never mind. Sorry. But no, that was. And why was he looking for his grandparents? If Was there a reason for that, or is it just him being crap?
Because
Yeah,
the
he
joke.
was just joking that the list of names of gods present at the when they changed the cripple god was so long he half expected to see the name of his grandmother.
I did my mind did perk up a bit when in one of those sections when they were describing these were the people that lived at that time, and I was like, wait a second, I remember from the next couple of books some of these names are kind of cool and things happens with these, but I don't remember exactly. I have just a vague feeling of each of the names, but I don't remember exactly what they do and who they are. But I'm looking forward to some of them. Like I don't know, the Forkula Sail, I think they're called or something like that. And they have reveal show up at some point. All these things.
Yeah, a lot of setup for the later books here, right? And just these
Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about,
passages.
Dan. They're extinct.
I guess. Well, I mean, we're going to read more about them, right? And
Who knows?
Jagood probably. And what's the other one? There were like 3 mentioned, right? There's another. What were the other people mentioned?
The Imas, the Talana.
Yeah. The
Yeah, I thought there
Imas
was
and
another
the
one.
No, there
also.
is.
Maybe not.
The Jagood,
Yes.
I thought.
The Kachain
The
Shamal.
only Jag
Oh,
I
the
know is the
Kachain
car. I don't know what
Shamal,
you
yeah.
guys are talking about.
Sorry, was that? Okay. Okay.
And so we end with a big assassin brawl, and we learn who is killing the assassins in Darujistan.
Okay.
It's the Tistandi.
The prospect of Malazan intrusion looms large, and Anumarik takes matters into his own hands.
Do you think Anumarik? For some reason, I thought that Anumarik had a bunch of treasure in his island or something. I thought he was rich. That's why I was thinking maybe he should have just employed the assassin guild himself instead of killing them. But maybe it's actually easier for him.
Yeah, it's
to do
probably
that.
easier just to kill him. Well, and also he was trying to get a war started, wasn't he? Because they didn't know who was attacking who, and so I think the idea is that we're going to kill a bunch of them, then they'll start killing each other, and they'll be too distracted doing that to join the Malazans. Yeah, I found myself really a lot less sympathetic to Animander in this scene this time through than originally, because I was like, wow, yeah, this is. I understand where was it Mamet or Baruch that he was talking to, but it must have been Baruch. But it's like he's right. Like you're just kind of messing up his town. Like this is, and in fact, I think the Assassins Guild is kind of like one of the major functionaries in this town. Like, and he kind of outlines why they're so important. And you're really messing this all up in this war with the Malazans. And at the same time, we got the Malazans like planting bombs in the intersections. They're being pretty awful too. I'm like, man, this is both sides here aren't really coming off very good.
Yeah, can you imagine that we're following, like our heroes are the ones planting bombs in the street? That's crazy.
I mean, they're terrorists, I guess.
Yeah. And then I think you make a great point that Rake is doing essentially what Malazan is doing. Maybe he doesn't intend to conquer them, so far as we can tell, right? But he's essentially interfering with their local politics, acting without consulting them, acting violently without consulting them, killing their own citizens. I mean, he's acting very, borderline imperialist, just to combat the Malazans, who are obviously quite literally being imperialists. It is something that I think I also on my first read it didn't hit me as hard, that like parallel that their plans within plans are all kind of leaving Darujistan as just like just in a sense. I mean, I wouldn't call assassins in a sense, but like all of the city of Darujistan caught in the crossfire between the Tistandi and Caladan Brood and then the Malazan forces.
My impression is that Anumarik wouldn't really give a shit if like all the people died or even what happened to Bill.
Right.
I don't think he cared about actually the people. He was probably more annoyed about losing battle and allies, but I don't think it doesn't seem he cared too much about like the general populace.
Well, yeah, we'll see. He definitely comes across as very cold-hearted in that
Yeah,
scene.
that's what I see.
You also get the sense like when Baruch asks him why he didn't even talk to him about what he was going to do, he says it didn't occur to me. So I guess you kind of get the sense that he's used to acting alone or acting without consulting with anybody. That was interesting about and a group of people that he addressed immediately after the assassin war, when they tell him who died and who lived, or like somebody died and somebody's really hurt, you don't get the sense that he cares even about that. Not just about the lives he took, but also about his own people.
So here's the thing where I would maybe slightly push back. Obviously, I have to avoid talking about later books and this, but that scene ends where he hears about people dying. He sighs.
Mm.
And I think that is very much left open to interpretation. But I think it is worth thinking for a moment. This is an immortal being.
Mm.
How does he process grief? What does he feel day to day? And without getting too into that will become a major point. And the existence of immortals and the Tistandi in particular, and how they go about life, again, in the not too distant future. But I think that there is possibly some subtle grieving going on in that moment, and that the tragedy of his existence does cut at him, but he certainly has grown to seem really callous and cold-hearted because he's seen so much horror. I mean, this is a guy who's been fighting wars for hundreds of thousands of years, right? This isn't also to absolve him of his crimes, because clearly he's doing bad things. And maybe the worst of which is when he kills people with his sword, they are chained within the sword, we learn in this section. And that's incredibly cool as a fantasy idea, and also horrible. His own personal hell. He damns people personally.
But do we know what's going on, like in this, when they're chained inside?
Not in detail, no.
Do we know
You
it's
just know
bad?
they're chained
I guess we have to assume it's bad because people don't want to go there.
There's
It involves chains and a wagon, so it doesn't sound very,
I guess so.
like a vacation.
And thousands of people moaning, souls moaning. You hear it is not pleasant.
And
I think it's safe to say.
And Baruch talks about how the pale mages, when they were given the two options, which is to die or to go inside the sword, they chose death.
I want to highlight something that I really love about this series. It's tied into this, which is Baruch experiences the demon being effectively eaten, its soul eaten by Animander Rake's sword. He experiences it from afar. Like, he hears the chains rattling, he hears the souls moaning, he gets a glimpse of a vision. And I love how visceral and sensory the magic is in Malazan, and that there is this psychic aspect to it that adds this feel. Like, sometimes you get the risk with series that play with kind of systematizing magic in some ways, of it feeling too much like technology. And I really like that between the sensory mystic nature of a lot of the magic and also the unpredictability of sometimes how it manifests, that Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont, as we'll see, really does create a sense of awe and fear and wonder with the magic, despite there being seemingly some sort of systemization of the system, of the magic warrens. Excuse me, I'm talking myself into a knot. I just love how he writes about magic. I just think it's wonderful and very fantastical and appropriate. And you learn new things if you're paying attention every time. We see glimpses of sorcery.
Yeah, I always feel the term magic system is a bit of an oxymoron. At that point, it's just a world with different physics. It's
Right.
not magic.
Well, but even magic in our life, it's just like, oh, take these ingredients and it should give you the result. It's just another
is
form
pretty
of chemistry,
Yeah.
somewhat.
You're right. The kind of traditional witchcraft, herbalism.
Or put
You're
a thing
right.
in your pillow or whatever. Technically, it's just like a recipe you're following. I mean, it doesn't give the results you want in real life, but if it did work, it could.
Yeah. Yeah,
I see.
if you can't explain it, that's when it's magic, right? Otherwise, it falls within the framework of chemistry.
Yeah. I wonder if it would more magic if it's like, oh, there's an unknown percentage that it's gonna work or not. Does that make it more magical? If you have a recipe that there's a mystery percentage that it's gonna work. Maybe sometimes 10%, maybe sometimes it's 80%.
I think unpredictability is key for me for magic feeling magical. Because to me, magic is the unknown. It's not just the unknown; it's the unknowable. It is the eldritch horror and eldritch wonder in the universe.
Yeah, I agree with Carl. Like I think Malazan like really walks a great line of like keeping magic very magical, but with the Warrens and stuff, there is that order that make it so it's not completely chaotic. It's not like anybody can just do anything. It's like, no, there's people that specialize in healing magic, and healing magic comes from here, but it doesn't get into it and turn it into a science,
Right.
like some people do.
Yeah.
A little too much of.
Yeah. I've got that one up. I'm reading through right now as well.
Yeah, I'm
How's it
weeks
going?
into it. Weeks into it.
That is a big bug. What book is it?
Wind and Truth.
Wind and Truth. Book 5 of the Stormlight Archive. Yeah, I'm like 200 pages in, I think.
Has it been out for weeks? I didn't realize.
No,
I thought it just came out last week or something. Anyway,
I
think it's
forgot
with two.
everything that happened in the previous ones. I can't read it.
I never read the first
I just read
one.
the books this year, so I guess that worked
That's
out
I
for me.
remember them being good, but again, I can't remember anything about it.
But I don't like his magic system. I will say that. I like his books. I like a lot of his characters. I do not like his magic system. It's just way too, like Varsha said, it's
Mechanical.
It's just physics, except
Yeah.
a different kind of physics. And that's what it is. It's what he wants it to be. But I don't respond the same way to that as I do something like Malazan.
I agree.
Well, it has a benefit that it gives the reader like something to like some sort of parameters in which like they can think, oh, he could do that, or he could do that with magic, or there's more like you can think and plan alternatives or make up your mind of what could happen, right? Whereas if you have big system, it's like your mind isn't even drawn to thinking about, oh, he could do that with magic or that with magic, because we don't really know what it can do.
It appeals to different people, right? Like
Yes.
I think, the growth and success of hard magic systems is very much tied to kind of that video game, D&D role-playing game, wanting to have those systems where you can play around and experiment. It doesn't mean that you can't do wonderful and surprising things, but that there are hard rules and you cannot break those rules. And that allows a certain type of enjoyment for, some people. And I can get little bits of enjoyment here and there, but I'm definitely much more in the camp of preferring magic. It's nice to have like kind of maybe categories or things like that, like some level of system nerdy like categorization, but I want my magic to ultimately feel wondrous and unpredictable. And the sense that maybe theoretically anything could happen, but that anything maybe isn't necessarily good. And you don't really know, or I guess you should say you don't know all the consequences of all the things you're doing whenever you're casting a spell, right? Or you're playing with gods.
Well,
It
and
gets a
having that
different
much
feeling.
more open system allows you to do something like have a sword that can slay people and have chains and a wagon involved. Like it's crazy, and it's like, but I love it.
Yeah. Malazan has lots of crazy, awesome, like hard metal, magic shenanigans. It's fantastic.
Yeah. But I was thinking of, like, for example, of a book. What was the book you recommended, Varsha? The one with the gun? Oh,
The
the
gun
one with the
was
gun.
it the hammer? Was
The
it the
hammer.
KJ
Maybe the
Parker book?
hammer. Maybe.
That one did that one have magic? Or sorry, were you
No,
saying
that's what I'm
something else
saying.
about it?
Like, the magic in those books is engineering, I guess.
Hmm.
Which is like,
Yeah.
it's kind of the same as magic, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
It's fun.
it's sort of the interpretation of that, right? It's not that they're calling it magic. It's people don't understand how it works, so they call it magic.
Yeah.
But at some point, when you understand enough, it's science, which is what a magic system of like completely fleshed out magic system would
Exactly.
be. It's the science, but you don't like even the practitioners of magic in this world don't know what's going on. For instance, when they're doing the soul transfer for Tatasale, the Rivi person says, I don't know how this is going to turn
Yeah.
out because she's
Yeah.
been through so much. So they can only do something and hope that it works. And that, I think, keeps the magic as magic, if that makes sense. It keeps it mysterious and like it is difficult though when you have magic that you can potentially do anything with to not solve problems the easy way by pulling some random magic out. Like it has to feel earned. I think that's the difficult problem to solve when you have a like a magic that's actually magic and not science. But yeah, I think Erikson does a great job of pulling that off. When problems are solved with magic, they feel earned, and there is appropriate, I guess, trade-off for having solved a huge problem with that much magic.
I think that there is I don't know if I should call it a problem, because I do believe in the subjectivity of criticism of art, but there has been a shift in the conversation around art and stories and this focus on logic. And hard magic systems are kind of one representation of that. And, you know, that isn't necessarily a requirement for something to be good. Like I think of like old Greek tragedies used to end, or comedies used to end with literal like Deus ex machina. Like we got the term because gods would come out of a machine, like in an ancient machine. They would appear to like save the day, to rescue people in the comedy, or like, basically my point being that like you can still, I think, have a satisfying and compelling story even with truly unpredictable elements. Now, I think we probably in the modern day have less of an appetite for like truly hardcore Deus Ex Machina. At the same time, the spoiler alert for the Lord of the Rings, the eagles at the end there are absolutely a Deus Ex Machina. Like while there is some setup, they come out of nowhere and save Sam and Frodo, right? And by all rights, Sam and Frodo should have died on Mount Doom, but they did, and we're happy because we feel like they earned it, right? And so I do think that kind of gets what you were saying, Varsha, right, about it feeling earned. And I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do with Deus Ex Machina. Like in my book, Truth of Crowns, there is a very explicit Deus Ex Machina, but it goes completely not the way you maybe traditionally would have, you might say, divine interference. And that was by design of wanting to kind of do what like Malazan often does and play with traditional fantasy tropes. I think that's interesting, is taking, the magical wonder and maybe making it a little more terrifying, or, playing with the unpredictability of these ethereal beings and powers.
I think that sort of thing does work. At least it's easier to do when you lack like a ton of different viewpoints. Because if you have like 40 different viewpoints, you're kind of like expecting to see things from almost all different points of view, or like someone is going to be an expert on something that you're going to see. Well, if you have your own, like just one character or two characters point of view, then you can expect that you're not going to know everything about this universe because this person doesn't know everything. So maybe our mind accepts it easier. At least that's what it feels to me. Which is why, like, it feels a lot harder in a book like this to do. effectively. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think he does it quite well.
I think one of the things in Malazan specifically that you get used to over time is, again, when you accept that you're not going to understand everything happening. Sometimes people do magic shit and you're just like, okay, I don't get it, but that was cool. Maybe I'll figure it out later. Maybe I won't, and you just kind of keep going. And that's something that I appreciate because most book series these days do not have the cojones to do that. Like, I think of I mean, I'm not going to spoil it, even though it's been out for decades, but like, there's a magical thing that happens in the second A Song of Ice and Fire book. And it's one of these things now that fans have like turned against and they're like, I hate it. It's terrible, blah, blah, blah. And like, I think it's cool and it is kind of unpredictable and it does open a can of worms, magically speaking. But, I like that kind of, you just never know what you're going to get. And it's why I read fantasy. If I wanted everything to be very like hard and fast, rules, like I would read nonfiction, which I do.
You would read sci-fi. Who would read sci-fi? Nobody.
Who would?
Nobody would.
Not any
Nobody
of the
reads
people here
sci-fi.
who are on a sci-fi podcast. Thanks, Dan.
No, exactly. I wouldn't be top dead on a sci-fi podcast.
Well,
Thankfully, the one we do on Friday is something else.
It's
tell
about
your evil
speculative
twin
fiction.
that you're in a sci-fi that he's in a sci-fi podcast. Anyway, sorry, I did not land that joke. Let's move on. Crocus, young hand. Should we talk about
Yes.
him?
My
Yes,
boy.
I love the when he brings the coin out and sets it on his counter.
Everyone's like, it's the One Ring. Like
Yeah.
that was a thing that stood out to me is increasing. I forget which of you mentioned that like last episode or the episode before, but like it really is clearly kind of there's an homage there to the One Ring, the way it all plays out.
It's
Yeah, but
pretty
I found
funny.
this
It
just
continues spinning.
so
Sorry,
much
go ahead, Shannon.
funnier. No, I was gonna say what you just said. I found this so funny, just the imagery he uses, and just this coin pops out and it just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning, and everybody's looking at it, and it's like, wow, this is just absurd. But
Yeah.
I loved it.
I could imagine everyone's eyebrows just keep rising. Like,
Right. It's like it suddenly goes slow-mo. And
Yeah.
everyone's like kind of looking around
Yeah.
at each other.
At the beginning, it's kind of normal.
And
Like, oh,
Crocus is
interesting.
like,
And
and then Crocus is like, not this ring, or not this coin.
It is. It's great. I love my stupid, horny, thief teenager.
He's checking
I found
sorry out.
him maddening this time around, especially all the stuff at the end when he's returning this. Like, I was just like, I don't know. I didn't remember being quite so annoyed by him last time. This time I'm like, God, you're so stupid. You are so stupid.
yeah. Because
I love
especially like, there's what does he see in this girl? Like, not obviously because he doesn't know her, so he just looks good. So she's, he's not in love with her. He's just horny because he doesn't know anything about her, right?
Exactly. And he doesn't know better. And
Well,
he
he's
thinks he is.
16. He doesn't know the
Yeah.
difference between love
That's
and
okay.
horny.
And he basically proposes to her. It's amazing. And then she decides to give him a little tease. Like, it's great. It's just like two teenagers just being like weird and horny with each other. I love it. It's hysterical. It's so lighthearted amidst all the like crazy darkness and war. Like,
Like a
It's just
slice of
silly.
young adult fantasy book in the right. So that's how it feels to me a lot. It feels like a lot of those books are aimed at teenager, where the main guy is a teenager, and then there's the girl and all those things, and it's it's not serious. It's kind of funny. Yeah, that's how
And
it felt to me.
I
But
and I
between
think
all the bad stuff.
right. And she's literally named Chalice, right? She's named Chalice. She is an object of desire. Like that tells you, Steven Erikson is telling you very explicitly about how he is playing with these tropes. And now, of course, we'll see what the payoff is.
Or even Crocus thinks like, of course she's named that.
Of course,
Of
yeah.
course.
And the epigraph is a poem about the coin that's sort of just rolling and ringing around the rim of a chalice that's only made for gems. That is so
I didn't
brilliant.
catch that.
That was good. I didn't catch that either.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's good eye. Good eye adjunct.
what was I going to say about? Oh, and Crocus was like totally checking out Sorry just before he noticed the blood on her knife, which I thought yeah. But going back to Crocus and Chalice, it's kind of sweet that he wants to give up his stealing ways and go study and go get on the council and become worthy of her. Yeah, I wasn't keen on that the first time around, but it's kind of cute.
It is absolutely cute, but let's be honest here. What are the odds that this stupid kid
Oh, it's never
follows
going to
through on
work.
even one of those things? You know, not talking about even drama, like forget the war going on. What are the odds he actually changes his ways for this girl? Zero.
No,
No
no.
chance. He's just a stupid teenager who's like, yes, I'm gonna go to college.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a job. I'm gonna move out from my uncle's house. You're gonna love me. Like I love him because he is so lacking in self-awareness. Like he's like such an he's like a real teenager, you know? And again, it's this fun playing on like the trope of like the One Ring and Frodo, and you know, the magical item bearer, where it's like it is this guy who's like his great talent is he's good at like stealing things. He's a thief, right? Like Frodo and Bilbo particularly is like a burglar, right? But he's not like
technically a burglar.
Right. He's not like gonna go out and like beat Sorry up.
Yeah.
You know? Right? Like he's really vulnerable. He's just some random guy who's happens to be gentry, who, you know, it isn't all that remarkable.
It was
it's just
remarkable though how like when he was talking with his uncle or something, but he was saying, oh, you know, it's fine for you to be a thief or whatever, but if you want, I was like, really?
Yeah.
Is that what a guardian would say? Like, oh, it's fine. I don't. And he said, oh, I don't think stealing is bad. It's not a sin or something like that.
He's
I
nobility.
was kind of I was shocked by Uncle Mammoth's kind of very suspect morality there, where he's like, oh, I don't really believe in rights, and I think it's okay to steal if they can't take care of their own property. And it's like, really? Like, I was just like, wow, I didn't remember any of this.
I did not either. Yeah, I forgot that Mammoth is like fantasy communist. It's actually kind of
libertarian, I guess, because he's like, I don't know, if you can't defend what you own, you don't deserve to own it, sort of thing.
Or true, you're right.
Yeah,
that is his thought. Rather than
like
communal property,
anarchist.
Anarchist.
I was
Yeah,
like, geez. And then, and I liked how you know, he brings up the Darujistan was born on a rumor thing, and then he won't tell his uncle where he heard her. He says, I don't remember, but it was Ralik Nam who said it, and it's he doesn't want to tell him his assassin buddy is the one telling him this stuff. But you know, Ralik Nam is probably the best influence in his life because like he's the one telling him, hey, you probably should stop being a thief at the end of this.
Yeah, sure.
I just thought that was really, and then his uncle's the one telling him it's okay to just go steal stuff.
Well, yeah, it's great because like so often in these stories, like these, you expect him to have a really bad relationship with his guardian, but like they get along, you know? Or I guess, you know, Aunt May, Uncle Ben, and Spider-Man, like they get along. But usually they're like a real moral compass, and that's not what this guy is either. Like he's just kind of a quirky weirdo, you know? And he's like secretly running a cabal to run the city, and it's just a strange dynamic. I am very curious if we get to talk to Steven Erikson at all, about kind of what, like, is this just for fun, like just playing with fantasy tropes, or was there like, you know, and once we get to the end of the book, I think we can all have a conversation about this. Like, is there something deeper that he's commenting on, particularly with Crocus and the cast in Darujistan, right? Because this is the one that to me most clearly is, you know, having fun with fantasy tropes and doing like kind of silly, you know, deconstructive, clever meta things with it.
For sure, that's something nobody has asked him before, like in an interview. Like, what are your thoughts on personal property and that sort of thing? I'm pretty sure nobody has asked him. What are political ideals? or your opinion on anarchist, libertarian, and communist
Yeah.
philosophy.
Were you saying you were pro or anti anarchy and communism
Yeah.
here with the character of Mamet?
Yeah. How do you feel about
is it-
gun ownership?
Yeah. Imperialism. Tell us your thoughts in detail on imperialism. Actually, that's one I bet he has gotten before.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, right? Yes.
The former maybe not so much, but yeah, I think it would
I'm
be
sure he
interesting.
has ideas on all these things, but I'm sure nobody
Yeah.
has asked him that. Well,
Yeah.
Could be a good idea. I don't know. Or
Yeah.
a bad idea. Probably a very bad idea.
No, I disagree. I think he would, but based on the interviews I've seen, he seems like a really genial guy. He's got a kind of dry sense of humor, and I get the sense that he would enjoy a conversation that's more intellectually stimulating and isn't just like, who's your favorite character?
Yeah.
You know?
Fair enough. I
Right,
guess because
like-
you never know about where people are going to go with these questions. It can go like really south very quickly
That's fair. That's
in some
fair.
cases.
You do have to
I'm
be
not
careful.
saying he's that kind of person. But
No, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. It's you never know. Anytime you start bringing up like political ideologies, it gets you're on shaky ground potentially.
it could be interesting. I wonder. Now I need to think about political ideology of other fancy writers.
Be a good Friday conversation.
True. Fair enough.
Actually would be a good Friday conversation episode.
Take your
Like,
10 favorite books and put them on a political compass of where you think they fit.
of course, gamify it.
Well, and then you can see if there's some certain trends of, I don't know. Or
Yeah,
what's the difference
Unity
between...
authors have been talking about this for a long time. Michael Moorcock wrote Epic Poo, where he basically took an epic poo on Lord of the Rings. And it's frustrating to read because he's clearly like just being kind of a hater, but he does have some points.
Yes.
And Ursula K. Le Guin also has written about the politics of fantasy and science fiction, and I think it's interesting.
And there are inherent, like, implicit, how do I say, political stances in certain fantasy tropes that everybody loves that you don't think about. Like, for example, the Divine Right of Kings almost all fantasy books, they have it. But if you think about it in terms of, what does it mean philosophically and politically, I assume most people would say that it's not correct. But it does
Certainly
play into, right.
in liberal democracies, I think that you would have people chafe against the notion.
But they still love those books. So
Yes,
Lord of the
absolutely.
Rings, again,
Yeah.
there's a lot of that.
I think there's something to be said for, separating, for lack of a better word, like fairy stories from your own like personal, immediate, day-to-day, concrete political beliefs. But anyway, we've gone way sidetracked. Although it's fun. It's fun having
That was
these
fun.
conversations
Yeah.
because of the books.
The subject of the Lord of the Rings comparison, we know now that they are going to be sent on a mission outside of Darujistan along with the coin bearer. So is that the Fellowship of the Coin forming now?
Yes. Yes, it is.
And let's
I love
not
it.
forget that Sari wants to brutally murder Crocus.
Yes.
That sweet teenage girl that everyone loves so much wants to murder Crocus.
That's my girl. She's got a heart of gold. A
But it's
heart of
fine.
Go.
It's fine.
very
Don't worry.
shadowy gold.
It's fine. She's just a teenage girl. Nothing to see her.
That sweet teenage girl that Whiskey Jack looks at and reflects on how his own innocence has disappeared, just like her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As he's planting bombs under crossroads.
It is just truly crazy imagery there. That like we're following these guys. We come to like them over the course of the book. Like I think inarguably they're like among our like relative good guys, and here they are planting bombs in the street. It's just crazy.
Well, one thing I did want to bring up with the when Animander, we find out that he's killing all the assassins and everything, and he says, the Emperor sent the claw here to recruit the assassins and use them against you, but we know that's not exactly true. I don't think. I mean, that was Quickben trying to meet with them. He's not a claw, And I don't think he's working under orders from the Empress. He's just, now maybe this is like standard Malazan protocol. I don't know. But like he's not exactly right in his assumptions of what they're doing. Because it seems like the bridge burners are largely on their own at this point. Like they're just kind of like, we're gonna do what we're gonna do
Great point.
to not get killed, because we
Yeah.
don't trust our higher ups, because they just killed over 1,000 of us. So we're gonna do this our way is kind of what I got.
The Dark Lord is not all-knowing.
And didn't Anomander
Yeah.
start this whole thing way before the bridge burners even got to Darujistan? Right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think they were still over in Pale at that point.
Maybe
right.
there were some other claws. I don't know. That we don't know about. I don't know.
I'm trying to remember if in the previous assassin scenes, if any of them we were given reason to think they were a claw. I don't think so. I don't think the Malazans have been in the city until now. Although we do know that there was someone was speaking, or no, they were just preparing. Turban Orr was preparing to sell out the city.
Yeah.
Right.
And we have heard in general.
Yeah, he doesn't even need them
Yeah.
there. He's ready to do it before they even cross the
Right.
lake. He's like, okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
set this up so I can sell everybody out.
Yeah.
He's a forward thinker.
Do we know also if when they use, because we know that Malazan used these assassins before, at least they say that they use these assassins to kill important people before they attack, right? But do
Well,
we
they
know
did in
that-
Pale, right?
I think so. I don't know. Someone mentioned it. Someone said something that made me think like, oh, this is standard procedure. Just hire assassin of the local area to kill important people before. But I don't remember if he said something like, oh, and after you do that, then these assassin guilds are incorporated into the claw, or they're just all destroyed. Because that would be pretty, like, why would you take that contract then, I guess, if they're going to destroy you after?
No, I don't think they would destroy him after. I think from what we've seen, the only Malazan protocol is to destroy the nobility afterwards as a way to kind of get the people behind him. Because I think they largely leave they take over a city and then they kind of institute some maybe like general laws like, okay, you're part of the empire now, so boop, boop, boop. And then they largely leave him alone, I think.
That makes sense.
And then except for mass murdering all the nobles. Or I guess maybe the worst nobles, I don't know. The ones that get the people the most excited for them.
I don't know. There's no good nobles.
Doesn't Rake tell
In this-
Baruch that
Okay.
the High Fist is usually appointed from the Assassin Guild, and they put
Maybe.
an assassin in charge? I think
He says that, but is that true? I
don't
don't
know,
know if
that
we've seen that to
yeah.
be true anywhere.
that was news to me, but yeah, I guess we haven't. I mean, how many High Fists do we? Yeah, I have to think
Well, over
about
the course
that.
of the series, we meet several. We only know, I think,
But
one, right? Well, I mean, is Dujek's a High Fist, right?
Dujek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tech.
and
He's
do
the
they
only
list
one.
off
Yeah, but he's
the
definitely
7
not
cities?
a claw.
Well, not
We don't know
claw.
who he left.
Wait, I don't think they made claws. They take the members of one of the members of the assassin guild equivalent in that city and make them a High Fist. So not members of the claw, but governing members of the city.
Dujek doesn't seem like an assassin type guy.
Yeah,
does he?
that's true. And I was
Well, he's a little different. He's a military. The fists that are in charge of the cities are a little bit different. And not getting into spoilers,
point.
but I can definitely say that's not true. Some of the fists we meet later on from other cities, like there's no way you can tell me that person was in an assassin guild. They're a lot of them are well, I'm not gonna get into it, but I don't believe they're assassins.
yeah, maybe that was something the emperors did, and Lassine has a different procedure. Anyway, did we find out in these chapters also that the former emperor was a mage? I didn't remember that
Yes.
at all. Yeah. Don't know
There
if
is
that's
mention of that.
significant, but that was interesting too. Oh, he was. What else? I think we covered everything. We were very haphazard about it, which is fun, but we covered everything that happened in these chapters.
I think we did. I
Yeah.
think we got all the big things. I mean, I anyone else have anything to talk about, or we could get into quotes if we
Let's
want
do
to.
I mean, I
quotes.
liked meeting all the hounds. That was kind of neat when
Yeah,
they showed up.
we
and
did.
I
That
know
was
their
cool.
names.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Got their names.
Yeah, we
There's
got
one,
names for not all of them, almost all of them.
Yeah.
the albino one. That was
Yeah.
Mm.
I have
That was
no
fun. I thought
that was
reason
just
for
really
this,
cool.
but Shan is my favorite. Who
this is
else?
good. Yeah, pick your favorite hound.
Pick your favorite hound. I also like the one named
I don't know. I probably
Blind.
got to go Gear because he was the first one to show up.
Mm.
I
And he
also
fought
think
Airlock.
Gear is my favorite. So you stole it this time. What goes around comes around.
There you go.
Dan and Steve, your favorite hounds. And then I guess we'll do quotes unless someone has other things we should be talking about.
I don't know
We
if I
haven't
know
even
enough
met
about
all the
them.
hounds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we met a couple. Yeah,
but not all of them.
Who?
And we barely
Huh?
know anything
we
about
just met
them.
like what 3 of them or 2 or 3 of them.
It's
We've met, well,
Blind.
we know the names of all 7.
Shan.
Yeah.
it's purely gut and vibes. Like
Yes.
it's not based
Yeah.
on anything serious.
Yes.
We're just naming, like, pick a hound.
Yeah. Just pick the favorite hound name.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite hound name? That's your favorite hound.
I think that's why Shan is my favorite now that I think about it.
You can't go wrong because they're all good boys and girls.
Yes.
The second one,
I forget
I
the
forgot the
names.
names. Yeah,
But
I remember there was one that I thought was stupid.
the one that was the one that
Which one was it?
the brown one, the one that was forget the name.
Maybe Palak. I didn't like, and Palak in general. I'm like, I don't like how it sounds in my mouth. That name.
Speaking of names, I wanted to ask Dan because I think in the first episode I pronounced Barrack as Garrick. Is Garrick from Magic the Gathering an homage to this series? Because it's pretty similar.
Could be. Yeah, it is very similar actually. I didn't think about that. I can't believe it. I don't know. Did we ever mention if we played Magic? I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I think the Wizards of the Coast probably someone from Wizards probably changed one letter just to be like, like if you know, you
Yeah,
know, kind of
true.
thing.
True.
They're definitely in the Wizards of the Coast and all their Magic and D&D lore and stuff. There are nods to the series. I know that they're
Mm.
I forget who, but some of the like create lore people have read the series and talked about it, that they're fans. I can't remember who, but
I see.
research for another day.
I found an illustration of the hounds.
Nice.
We can use that to decide. I like the
Dan's getting
on
very
the left one.
scientific about it.
Oh, this was not the type of art I was expecting.
Yeah.
This
Steve,
is the
you have
art
to
on the
put this in-
official, not official, on the wiki for the
You have
hounds.
to put this in the description, Steve. It's a requirement.
Okay.
You should send it to me.
But if you go to the Malazan wiki, that's the art next to the name of the hounds.
I'm staying
Now
away
they-
from all the wikis. I'm not taking. I'm not going to pull a Varsha or Dan and get spoiled.
Just look
What
at the
is-
names.
Whatever do you mean, pull a Varsha, Steve? I don't know what you're talking about.
And actually, Carl got spoiled too. On
I did.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to tempt fate. I've been waiting too
I
long.
could-
There's too many books in the series. I'm not going to spoil it.
I
I
can
think
tell
that's
you,
smart.
just
I
Googling
think you're very
I'm
smart.
not going to take a chance.
Googling fan art, I had stuff spoiled for me in Malazan. So
Mhm.
Really?
Ditto. And in fact, just even this read through, I've checked a couple things in the wiki, and I've actually had some Esselmont stuff that I haven't read spoiled, and I had a little bit of Witness, The God Is Not Willing spoiled. I was like, oh,
Wow.
shoot, I didn't know that.
wow.
I was like, oh well. But I mean,
See, the clear solution is to
Oh.
not care about spoilers.
yeah. Which, well, and I really didn't. I was just kind of like, oh well. I mean, now I know about this. This is a thing. 10 years after this series is
Yeah.
over, I'm like, okay.
But I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid, but because I've never been. I've always read like friends talking about Malazan and other things and seen art, and I've never spoiled anything because I don't understand what I'm seeing or what I'm reading. There's
I
so much going
forget.
on. That I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what this is a spoiler for. I don't know who these people are, and I can't remember anything. It feels
I
kind of
can't-
hard to spoil this series.
I mean, I can't keep track of the chapters we read, but still, I know I'm going to I'm gonna remember the one thing that I'm not supposed to remember. I'll remember that.
I
So
see. Wow.
I'm not gonna take a chance.
Even when I was
Okay.
reading through the series, I would freely click on things in the notifications I got from the Malazan Reddit, because I'm like, by the time I get to the book that this is about, I'll forget. And then I had one big thing spoiled for me that I was never going to forget.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I say had spoiled, I spoiled it for myself. That was all very much
I mean,
my fault. But
I'm not going as far as subscribing to the Malazan subreddit. Like, that's insanity. But, you know, like, you still see random discussions, and those
Yeah.
haven't spoiled anything.
they're really good about putting spoiler tags and stuff, and there are a lot of new
but
readers on
still,
there
I
who
mean,
have questions. But yeah.
like, you're always going to get spoiled if you subscribe
Yeah.
to the...
You'll
Okay.
catch strays.
So quotes,
Quotes.
non-spoilery quotes.
I don't think I have any this week. I'm lame, but I can't remember any that stood out.
I think I don't have very many, except for some bits of Whiskey Jack's monologue, but we already talked about this. I want to talk about the poem at the beginning of chapter 11. That the one that ends, "The dead never interrupt," said the mason, but they arrive.
I remember that, yeah.
That is a good one.
I don't know what the poem actually is about, but and I don't know if this interpretation makes any sense at all, but it feels like great start, right? So they
That's just like what I start off every sentence with that. Like that's just so.
this-
That's why I'm
People
what-
really miss out not getting to see the video of how often Steve is just like on mute, laughing and rolling his eyes at us in the background.
I
Yeah.
laugh because I'm the same. That's what's it's funny.
That's true of every sentence, and and I just say it in before every sentence too. But this bit stood out to me. I guess the whole discussion about the sun and what of the sun, asked I of them. It's not its cloak of revelation, the warmth of reason in your shaping. And one among them answered, "No soul can withstand the sun's bones of light, and reason dims when darkness falls." So I was, okay. Again, I don't know if this makes any sense, but this feels a bit, and I don't think that's what this poem is about at all. But I was wondering if this is about, ignorance and fanaticism and how that leads to that sort of the darkness of the mind, right? Or the death of the mind. And so death is more comfortable in the night, and the light of revelation keeps people safe from death. I don't know. It was an interesting poem. It made me think of this one quote from the Discworld's Death, when he talks about the death of the mind, when there's a bunch of fanatics going around trying to find someone to blame. But yeah, it's a good poem though, regardless of how much I misinterpreted it.
Any interpretation you have is the correct interpretation, because it's an interpretation.
Is the wrong answer.
Author is dead, etc., etc. All those things. I don't know what the current,
Yeah.
I don't know, belief in those things, or like theory of those things. Still,
Yeah, it's whatever you want. But
is the author dead? Is the author dead and then came back as a zombie or something? There was a cool post I saw about, like, or the death of the author, or the zombie author, or like the zombie puppet author, which pretty much people making up their own interpretation of what the author would have said, and then seeing it as official or something. There was like 10 of them. All these things, like describing different ways of interpreting. It was pretty funny.
Was it an SMBC comic? I
Maybe it was. Maybe it was.
Do you follow
it was-
SMBC? We have to chat about that. Okay. I love SMBC, but and it sounds like the kind of thing that they would make. But does anybody have ideas on what this poem might be about in the context of what we read in these chapters? Because I couldn't put that together.
I'm really not good at interpreting poems. I will always choose the epigraphs that are more like a cut out of some book or something somewhere over these, because I don't know, like
Oh yeah, I
You know,
always prefer those.
I lost my 4.0 in college when I ran into a teacher that refused to accept my interpretation of poems because it wasn't the same as hers.
Oh
So I've
no,
always had a
those
chip
people are
on my
worse.
shoulder about poems since then.
yeah, those are the worst. Those
Yeah.
are.
I found
really
the link
was.
for anyone interested.
Thank you.
It's not a comic; it's a Tumblr post.
Okay. All right.
Seen through Reddit.
Okay.
For any
Any
layers.
other quotes?
Yeah, I have no interpretation. I would really have to do some deep diving into that poem.
Yeah. Some homework over the break because
Yes.
I don't know if we mentioned during the recording that we'll be taking at least a week break with the holidays. We thought we were smart by recording ahead of time, and then the holidays came and crushed it. So
Yeah. 2 weeks. But we'll try to.
yeah,
I
we'll
don't
try
know.
and figure it out.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a slightly longer section though for the follow up, right? We're gonna go
That's true.
through book 6.
5
I
and
think
6.
it's slightly longer than our normal length.
Yes.
What I meant to say was it was planned. We planned to have this week for the long section just to line up with the holiday and everything.
Nice.
Right. We
Yes.
knew this was going to happen.
This
and
is
we
all planned weeks
for
ahead of
it.
time.
So, everybody read that poem and tell me what this is about and why my interpretation was so wrong. I also like the one about spiders on chapter 13 because it's. Okay, I don't remember the specifics, but it's about like 2 things that are trapping each other in their web. And that's really cool because the assassins, each group of assassins thought that they were trapping the other group, but then they both got destroyed by a third group.
Yeah.
Cool. If that's everything, any other quotes? Last call. Going once, going twice.
I read all mine when we were going through.
Nice.
Any quotes, Steve?
I didn't. I read these chapters and I enjoyed them, and then I sat down and I went through like a recap of certain chapters if I feel like I missed something. And there's a ton of stuff that was like I did not catch any of this. Like, what is going on? Like, how did I read that? So I was more focused on like trying to keep up with what's happening. And I slacked on quotes this week, so I'll have to redeem myself next week.
Next week, Steve. You have to start us.
2 weeks.
with
2
quotes.
2
weeks
weeks. I
from now.
have 2
Oh, yeah.
weeks to redeem myself.
That's true. All the quotes.
All the quotes.
All right. Cool. So in that case, we will see everybody in 2 to 3 weeks. It's unclear at the moment whether we're going to be able
2
to.
weeks is New Year's Eve, just so point out to you guys.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we
Cool.
might be a little toasty.
Unless you wanted to do it a different day that week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
so
figure something
we'll-
out. Yeah.
We'll see if
different
we
day.
can
All right.
reschedule, but if not, then at max it might be 2 or 3 weeks before we see everybody. And we will be back with books 5 and 6 of Gardens of the Moon. And as a reminder, we're working approximately 100 pages of our way into each book. So the final discussion after that will be the rest of the book. Yeah, and if you'd like to join us for the discussions either here or on the forum, check out the pagechewing forum. Thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you soon. Bye.